Hello, everyone, and welcome to Toronto Apologetics. My name is Tony Costa. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that is more germane to the country of Canada, where I live. And I want to talk about the Bill C-4 that was passed in early December in the Parliament of Canada in Ottawa and officially became law on January the 7th of 2022. It is a bill that addresses conversion therapy, particularly banning conversion therapy, banning any forms of therapy that try to help people who may be struggling with same-sex attraction and want to become straight or become heterosexual and so forth. Well, Canada has now made that a crime to even attempt that or to even advise that. It is a criminal offense to do so. And so this also has a bearing on a number of pastors. And what do pastors do in situations like this, where you have a commitment to the Word of God, and on the other hand, you've got the government breathing down your neck, claiming that you are breaking the law. Now, we want to take a look at some of the background to this. And so I want to share this PowerPoint here with you. I want to begin by first addressing the preamble to the Canada Constitution Act of 1982. And so the preamble to that act says this: whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And so the beginning of this Constitution Act begins by affirming first and foremost the supremacy of God, and secondly, the rule of law. Notice it doesn't say it recognizes the supremacy of the rule of law and then the supremacy of God or the rule of God, but rather God comes first. The supremacy of God is above all things. And the rule of law follows logically from the supremacy of God. No God, no laws, no lawgiver, no laws, no objective standard, no objective grounding, no objective laws. And so we need to understand then that according to Canadian law, entrenched within its legal language is the idea that God is absolutely supreme. Unfortunately, for our country, God has not been supreme for a very, very, very long time. And so we need to understand first and foremost that we live in a country where I live in Canada. We live in a country that basically is speaking from both sides of its mouth. Now, here's the preamble to the bill under discussion, Bill C-4. It says this, I want you to listen very carefully to the language. Whereas conversion therapy causes harm to society because, among other things, it is based on and propagates myths and stereotypes. I want you to notice those two words, myths and stereotypes about sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, including the myth that heterosexuality, cisgender identity, and gender expression that conforms to the sex assigned to a person at birth are to be preferred over sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. In other words, the idea that heterosexuality is normal, that it is based on birth, that is to say the sex assigned to you at birth, which is what humans have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, and they still do that today. The idea that heterosexuality is assumed, that is to say you're either going to have a baby boy or a baby girl. So you're not going to have a third type of baby. You're going to have either a boy or a girl. Well, the preamble here says that these ideas have to go, that these are based on myths and stereotypes. Now think about that. When a child is born and that child is a male, this bill says not so fast, not necessarily. That child may look like a male, but is actually not a male or does not identify as a male. And this is where we're at our society today. Notice it goes on to say, in the bill here. And whereas in light of those harms, it is important to discourage and denounce the provision of conversion therapy in order to protect human dignity and equality of all Canadians. So notice here, it denigrates heterosexuality as normative, referring to human beings being born male or female as a myth and a stereotype. And then it turns around and says they want to protect the human dignity and equality of all Canadians. Well, if we have human dignity, then why is the concept of being born heterosexual part of this myth or this stereotype that somehow if you're heterosexual and you think that this is normal and that it's better than other types of sexual orientation, well, then you're simply wrong. And then it goes on to say, and the equality of all Canadians. They're not treating all Canadians the same. A country that allows the butchering of its unborn children, that allows the elderly to apply for euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, a government that promotes death as a culture. This is not a government based on God's laws. And so they use the language of human dignity. This is simply virtue signaling. They'll use the language of equality, but in actual fact, when you play this out, there is no equality among Canadians. No equality whatsoever. In fact, if you look at the present situation now, our own, the Canadian Prime Minister basically accused anyone who's not vaccinated as being a misogynist and a racist. So one of the most divisive prime ministers Canada has ever had. Now, what's the problem with all this? The problem with this kind of language is that it is language that is a frontal assault against God's sovereignty. It's not just a frontal assault against God's sovereignty, but it's an assault upon the very definition that defines human beings as human beings. In other words, what this bill seeks to do is undermine the very language, the very identification by which God, the Creator, has identified humanity. And I'm going to take you through a list of scriptures to see and to show you how that's being done. Now, in Genesis 1:26 to 28, that's a typo there, by the way, folks, my apologies. It's Genesis 1:26 to 1:28. Excuse me, Genesis 1, verse 26 to 28. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, what's important about this text? What is important about it is, number one, God created humanity in his image and in his likeness. The other thing is God gave us dominion. Just like kings have dominion, God gave his human image bearers dominion over everything. He delegated all of creation to them. They're to have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, and the livestock. That is to say, the land animals, the animals in the air, the birds, and also the animals, the creatures in the waters, the fish, and even the very creeping things, the very creatures that creep on the earth. So notice it goes on to say, so God created man in his own image. Now this is important. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, why is this important? Number one, God created humans in his image. And how does God define that image? What does the image of God look like? The image of God looks like this: male and female. God's image bearers are binary beings. That is to say, they're either male or female. They're heterosexual. their union is heterosexual. Remember what we just saw in that preamble, that all of these ideas are based on myths, not according to the Bible. According to the Bible, God created humans in his image, gave them dominion, and he defines them as his image bearers by defining them sexually as male and female. And then it says, and God blessed them. And so the idea of male and female is intricately connected to our identity as the image of God. Human beings being made in the image of God are defined as either male or female. Now notice what happens next. Because of this heterosexual union, because of this male and female binary relationship, notice that now God blesses them to multiply and procreate. But God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So they're now called to be fruitful and multiply. In other words, this union that we call marriage was created to procreate the human species. The means by which human beings multiply, the means by which human beings procreate, is through a male-female union. Why? Because God has defined that it is through the union of a male and a female in partnership, they will create new life. That is not possible with two males. That is not possible with two females. That is only possible in a union between a male and a female. So what do we learn from all this? God's image is defined as male and female. That male and female union is the means by which God ensures that the human race is sustained. And that's the only way that the human race can be sustained. Now notice that in the New Testament, when God took on flesh in the person of Jesus, when Jesus dealt with the question of marriage, we're told, Jesus answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Now notice what Jesus does is when someone asks him a question about marriage and divorce and remarriage and so forth, do you notice he points right back to the beginning? He goes, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? Now, did Jesus think that these were myths? Did Jesus think that these were stereotypes that were based on silly stories from the Old Testament? As the preamble points out, that these are just myths and stereotypes. Did Jesus of Nazareth truly think that? When he said, have you not read? Well, have you not read where? In Genesis. Have you not read that the one who created from the beginning, that God made them the first pair, he made them male and female. And then notice that Jesus quotes here from Genesis 2:24, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother. This is talking about marriage. A man will leave his father and his mother for what purpose? And hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Well, what is this referring to? It's referring to marriage. So Jesus not only sanctifies marriage, he blesses marriage. And notice how he says, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. And that can only happen in the marriage between a man and a woman, because a man and a woman are corresponding partners. They match each other. They complement each other. And in the completion or in the complementary union of marriage, they become one flesh. And this brings about life or procreation, as we saw. And Jesus points out, what therefore God has joined together, let man not separate. So notice it's God who actually marries the couple. It's God who joins people together in marriage. And Jesus points out that when God joins people in marriage, man is not supposed to separate that union. That is a holy union. So why are where we are today, where our governments have basically spurned the word of God, they've snubbed God to his face, and they basically not only rejected his word, but they have undermined the meaning of the words that God has used to define human beings. Well, this is a problem that has continued up to this day, and it's getting worse. We are reminded of the words of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 5, verse 20 and 24b. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, for they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts and have despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. So notice what the prophet Isaiah says here. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. What God calls good, people call evil. Whatever God defines evil, Isaiah says these people come along and call it good. What God says is good, they will call evil. In other words, they are twisting the meaning of words, they're rejecting the meaning of words, and they are taking its opposites. So woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So if God says something is good, you will notice the world will say that's evil, that's repressive. When God says something is evil, the world will say that's not evil at all. That is liberating and progressive if we follow it. Now notice what Isaiah says the reason for this is. What is the major problem here? Why are people rejecting God's objective word? And why are they rejecting the very concept of objective truth? Well, verse 24b says, for they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts and have despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. There's the problem. They have rejected the law of the Lord. They have rejected that objective standard of right and wrong. And so when you reject that objective standard in right and wrong, then what do? You simply replace it with your own. And that's exactly what we are seeing today. So where is this all going to end? I fear that it's not going to end well. Because at the end, what we find, according to Psalm 9, 15 to 17, the nations have sunk in the pit that they made. In the net that they hid, their own foot has been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. And the very last verse, verse 17, the wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forget God. The wicked shall return to Sheol, the place of the dead, the place of punishment. There, the wicked are going to return. And notice it just doesn't say the wicked. It says all the nations that forget God are going to be turned into Sheol. And so, folks, these are the fruits of what happens when we return to the pit, when we reject God, when we reject his revelations. This is where we get to. This is the end result of all these things. And so it's happened already here in Canada. It's already a matter of law. The question is, what are you going to do when it comes to your shores? And so I'm very happy to see that starting this Sunday, January 16th, there will be many churches that are going to remain faithful. They're going to preach on human sexuality, on biblical human sexuality. And I know John MacArthur and many, many churches in the United States are going to be joining in solidarity with their Canadian brothers and sisters to preach on the same thing. And so if you're a pastor and you're watching this video, I would encourage you as well this coming Lord's Day, January 16th, to take a stand on the pulpit and preach on biblical human sexuality. Because at the end of the day, it is not the government that defines this. It's not the state that defines this. It's not the Supreme Court that defines this. At the end of the day, it is God Almighty himself who defines this. So folks, thanks for watching. I would encourage you to register for my upcoming new online course on logic. There'll be information on that on the description box. That course begins on Sunday, January the 23rd and runs for 8 consecutive Sunday nights until March 13th of 2022. Would encourage you as well to subscribe to the channel. Please pass information along about this channel. Let others know about the channel, and also like the video as well. And so hopefully this video has been stimulating. Hopefully it has challenged some of your ideas. And so look forward to seeing you again, Lord willing, in the near future. Take care and God bless. Bye for now.